pikers. The river's blown. I just thought I'd talk to you a little bit about one of the flies that I've been using for a few years now. Talk a little bit about the development of the fly, where it comes from and why I think it works so well. I come from bait fishing background, and then I moved on to obviously lure fishing, and then ultimately on to fly fishing. One of the most popular lures that I found was really productive on the River Wye, and most rivers actually, and lakes, was this replicant. Now Fox discontinued this pattern a few years ago now, and as you can see I've got one in a packet and I've got a box full of them outside because they really are that good. Now I don't know whether it's the colour combination with the yellow line, sort of darker top and bottom, or whether it was the vibration from the paddle tail. But hookup rates were always good as well. It gets down, this does, to the bottom of the river really quickly. I found that if you used it in a straight line retrieve, a couple of foot off the bottom, that was the most productive. No jerking, no jerking it up and down, letting it fall to the bottom and jerking it up. Just a steady, slow retrieve in the current, almost enticing the pike to come in and have a look and, oh, that's an easy meal, I'll have it. So that's where it started. Started out when I was quite new to fly time with this pattern, which is a Gunner Bramer super jerk. Now that caught me my first £20 pike on the River Wye, and this pattern or iterations of it have caught me many big fish, lots and lots of doubles, and it accounted for a number of 20s. As you can see, that was connected by wire, and the hooks are perfectly fine, and the fly, although perhaps a little bit overdressed, the fly itself could probably be fished again and again. And that's something I'll come on to, is using even £40 wire to connect two hooks together there to create a little bit of a movement. The issue was that the first thing that gave up after time was the wire, the connecting wire. I used to use woolen materials as well, and denser materials, which I'll show you how that's evolved. I keep this fly because it was the original version of the fly that got me a £20, but I look at it now and think, goodness me, that's well overdressed. But it worked, and we all have to start somewhere, so get tying, and you know, your fly time will evolve as mine has. Other iterations of the same fly, these type of things, they've all hooked or caught fish. You'll see there's a couple of beads in the middle of that one there, and that's the same type of wire connection that I was using before. This is again, it's a Gunner Bramer pattern, nowhere near tied as well as Gunner ties them, but that was a few years back in my sort of fly tying career, if you like. One of the issues I found with these ones, again, is the hooks were bending the back. So if you hook the bottom of the river, or even in fish, this one's been bent several times, and I had to rebend it back to get it, so I don't actually use those two anymore. Sometimes, like on this occasion, I've lost the hook first. In fact, what I use this for now, because both hooks have been broken, I use this for casting in the field, so it's quite a nice size to cast with. But it does show that occasionally it's the hooks that go first and not the wire. Again, this is why I'm looking at that new shanked system with the split ring, which theoretically this is the only bit that needs replacing. We will see. Another thing that I've found works really well is using slightly big beads in between the two hooks, going back to the old 2-hook system that I was using. So either on this particular one there's 2 glow-in-the-dark beads there, which I've been experimenting with glow-in-the-dark materials and quite successfully actually, and there'll be more on that perhaps in another video. But this has worked really well, and bright yellow in between. So I use a 4.0 and a 2.0 on this particular pattern that's had fish up to £27, so that works really well, and that's something worth experimenting with. I've moved away from the double hook setup on this fly. I really like this style of fly and this size of fly with what is effectively a super jerk. Gunner Bramer super jerk. Obviously nowhere near tide as well as gunner, but these work. I've had plenty of fish on these, but I've moved away from the 2-hook scenario. I've actually found that I get more hookups on the 2nd hook towards the back, hence I've moved over to a shank at the front and then a hook at the back that I'm using. This is accounted for some fantastic fish. You can see that the flash a bit at the back, I've included a few black elements in there. It's the first time I've done that on this fly, but I'll definitely give that another go. The fly low tide today is going to be similar to this. Last week I used this fly on the River Wye Pike Championships, which I'm pleased to say that I won that. There was 14 anglers and some very good anglers. I managed to get 2 pike out, which meant I had the biggest fish and total length. So I'm quite pleased with that, but it really was down to this fly. The shank system's far superior to using a wire connection between the 2 points. So this system is very robust, and it's actually the hook. The hook will be the first thing that gives up. Probably get a season, 2 seasons out of this system. And as you can see, that it's not too dissimilar in colour, in size, and in shape, because it's very narrow, to the original lure that I found popular on the river as well. So, but this is kind of an evolving project really. Something that's not talked about a huge amount is the colour of the fly. So this top fly, as you can see, it's got dirty really in the water. This is quite bright and fresh. Now I'm still catching fish on that, and in fact the last fly that I tied needed to be used a little bit before I had a fish on it. Whether that's down to the colour just blending in a little bit more, or whether it's just down to fishing situations, I don't know. But this was clearly a similar bright colour to start with, but it's now a bit mucky, dirty roach, I guess. Also the eyes are exactly the same eyes, but the epoxy resin over the top has fell off both sides actually. There's a fish that on Blagden had a really good day on that fly on Blagden, as well as on the Wye. So, and you can see that the hook is starting to wear, and I've had to bend that back into position. As my fly tying's evolved, I've looked at ways to deal with the problem of hooks being the weakest problem. So this here is a small rig that you pass through this tube fly. So you've got a tube there at the bottom and it passes through the front, and then you can just connect the loop onto your snap link. Now this, for some reason, I've had problems with hookup rates, and in fact I had probably what would have been my PB pike take this fly on Blagden not long ago, and it didn't hook up, and I've had 2 or 3 takes on this. So that experiment, I think, is is going to be put into the archives. The shank of the hook is that long, effectively, meaning for some reason when the pike takes that, I mean, I don't understand it, but hookup rates have been dreadful. So you don't get many opportunities with big fish, usually one a day. So whilst I'll have a think about how I might change that fly, because they certainly want that fly. It's just about getting it to hook up. Again, you can see this pattern is very similar to the original. Colour combination, fishes just gently in the current like this. Another hook I've experimented with is the GB378, I think it is, AX. Now these are fantastic for going through weed and so on, but again the hookup rates aren't for normal fishing situations. The hookup rates are dreadful. I've not found these to be very good at all. In fact, I've had a couple of 20s again where they just haven't hooked up. I'm still struggling to get the hookup percentage to sit here and say that's the way to go. I've no doubt, I mean, these fish through terrible structure without hooking up, but that also means that the pike have to take them a certain way to get up a good hookup rate on these. So certainly only fish with these in the right situation, I suppose, like anything. You can tie a fly on the shank that will last pretty much forever, and then all you need to do is change the hook and the split ring. The benefit of that is you can create a weak link at the point of the hook, so you don't lose the rest of your fly. Now this is new, I've not fully experimented with this yet. It'll be interesting to see. I can use smaller hooks as well, because it hangs down. You almost, with a size, that's a size 6 hook, you almost get the same hooking properties as a much bigger hook. So I'm going to give this a try. So this is the dropper shank system that Gunnar Brahmer's developed. I think he's references in his video the person that originally came up with this idea. This is my slide using a one-step looper. You can, rather than having to twist the wire, you can then just back the wire up on itself and then use the thread to close it off and strengthen it. The difference between the two is the tool that's needed. The tool that Gunnar bought for his was, I think, about $70 in the US. I don't think there's anything that's similar to it in the UK. The one-step looping tool that I use, you have to use slightly lower gauge wire, but what that does mean is if you just double over the wire, then you've got the same kind of strength. I'm hoping that this new system, developed for musket fishing in the US, which you can add a treble to actually, I'm hoping this new system will mean that these fantastic flies that we tie will see a longer life. We can just replace the hooks. Also, the 30-pound split ring there that I'm using will be the weakest point in my setup, so I'll be using a 35-pound core fly line, 55-pound fluorocarbon, 2 foot of that, and then a 18-inch 35-pound wire trace. So the split ring at 30 pounds will be the weakest link in the system. So if I hook the bottom, then when I pull straight, then the split ring should, in theory, give up first, or the hook should straighten out. Which means we're not going to be losing lots of tackle in the river So that's something I'll feedback for again. I'll feedback in the future. Today I'm going to show you how to tie this. There's 5 tying-in points, so it's fairly straightforward. It's all synthetics, so it's quite lightweight. It dries out really quickly. It's very thin profile, so it basically, there's no water resistance when it's swimming in the river, which means you can swim it really slowly, and it will just, let's hope the hookup rates on this are good, and that the pike don't mind that hook just sitting a little bit lower. I can't see it being a problem myself. Smaller hook, so perhaps better fish care, only nicking the jaw. Perhaps a better hook hold with a smaller hook as well, because the narrower point will allow quicker and deeper penetration with less of a set required. So what we'll do now, we'll get into tying one of these, either with the shank up front, shank with a hook, or you can tie it with 2 hooks with wire in between and the 2 beads, or this new method that I'm going to show you today. So this is where it started. This is currently proven to be a really successful iteration, and then this is the new experiment. I could end up out there, I don't know yet. I've never gone back to that yet. We'll see. With the articulated fly, you've got a small shank at the front and a hook at the back. 3 tying-in points on the hook and 2 tying-in points on the shank. So to tie the shad stroke roach baitfish pattern, I'm using predator fly fishing body fibre for the tail, with a mixture of Magnum Flash from Hedron. You could just use the pearl colour if I was going to choose just one colour to save you a bit of expense, but I like to blend in a couple of Magnum Flashes. That's the tail section, so that's 2 tying-in points, and then we move on to the wing. And now for the wing, I'm just using the body fibre in grey on top, with a slight hint of polar flash. For the belly, I'm using Silver Scales big fish fibre mixed in with strung fuzzy fibre and this glisten glint stuff, which you can get from any good textiles company. There's loads of it there, or you could just buy some dubbing, sort of a predator dubbing. So that is used all along the belly and up to the throat. In the throat I just put a little bit of orange, so I'm currently using this body fibre. I normally use big fish fibre, but I'm out of that, so just use what you've got really. For the 2 flank lateral lines, I use a very thin edition of this body fibre in yellow. Again, just use what you've got. You're just after a straight synthetic fibre really. And then for the head, at the moment I'm using the body fibre in grey and the tiger hair in grey. I'm going to use a small amount of this, mixed in together, blended. Again, just add a little bit of polar flash in there, just to bring out a couple of accents in the colour. I think blending is really important, otherwise you get a solid colour. As you can see, it's only a slight addition of different colours in there, but you can see the effect blending has, and I'll show you how to blend shortly. I'd normally use the big fish fibre in grey, from silver scales, but I'm out of that at the moment, so I need to place an order with Chris. Moving on to the head, I'm using Sybay 3D epoxy fish eyes in the pike pattern, 10mm. They do them in a roach pattern as well, which I really like. I'm currently using Vivus monofill in 0.2mm for the tying thread, and then you'll need some super glue. The reason I'm using the mono is when you add super glue to it, it really sort of plastic welds it to a certain extent. Again, if you look at Gunner's videos, you'll see I'm just following a lot of the techniques that Gunner's developed. So definitely subscribe to Gunner's channel, it's fantastic. So whilst there looks to be a lot of materials there, these will last you a long time, and they're not expensive. You know, there's probably £3 a pack, probably £20–30 worth of materials there, but that will last you for probably 40 flies, maybe something like that. So less than £1 a fly really in terms of fly tying materials. First off, we're going to take the monofilament, fill the shank, it's really important we get down to the bottom of the eye here and just close the eye slightly. That'll stop the split ring from moving around too much and fouling with the materials. Super glue the thread onto the shank. I'm trying to make a fly here that can outlast the hooks, which can be replaced, so it's really important to spend a bit of time making sure the shank's fully coated. And while that's drying, we'll prepare the materials for the tail. Take a small bunch, probably, I don't know, a third of a pencil's width. So we're going on pencil widths. That's all we need of that. We're going to then split that into two groups, one slightly sparser than the other, and that's the two tail sections, two tail tying in points. I use 3 white flasher, 3 silver, and then a good hank of the pearl. Cut that in half. So you don't need to use headrons full length, because you can use pretty much any flasher boo available in the UK, as long as it's the Magnum. So we're going to tie in the sparse, then this, and this, and this. Tying the tail section 2/3 facing back, 1/3 facing forward, all on top, 3 turns. Fold it over, catch it behind, so bullet tie, and then tie in front too. Every tying point we're going to use super glue. I always just dab the super glue just to make sure it's not tacky. Take the hank, flashaboo, make sure all the tips are slightly out of line, and tie it in 1/3 back and 2/3 forwards. So the 1/3 back on top, just in front of the last tying point. And then what I do is just take my fingers, fold it back, and try and get some around the sides as well. Just spread out the hank. Tie again over the top, bullet tie 2 or 3, and then in front. Sorry about the teenagers, a pain in the ass. Super glue, like dab of super glue, just to finish off again. We'll do that on every single die. Now we go forward and leave a gap. These gaps won't be visible. One of the reasons I like using the nylon thread is it kind of takes on the colour of everything around it. Now we're going to take the slightly thicker hank. Now we take the slightly thicker hank, and we're just going to tie that in 50-50. This time I try and split the and get it to go around the sides. Have to be perfect. Three ties, and again use your thumb to distribute it around the shank. Majority on the top, with a sparse amount around the sides and on the bottom. Again a bullet tie, so over the top, 3, and then just come around in front. So obviously if you were tying this on if you were tying the articulated version, you'd be tying on the hook at the moment. I usually start halfway up the shank of the hook. The next section of flashaboo, again just taper the fibres, place it on top, finding the just behind where the last set finished, just a loose wrap, and then a couple of tight ones, fold it back, couple in front, and then super glue. So if we were tying on the hook, we'd have a small gap, and the eye would be about here. So you'd have enough for one more tying point, and then obviously the shank would be further forward. As I mentioned, you could just use one colour of Flashaboo. If you've got no Magnum Flashaboo, just use a bit of Crystal Flash or something else just to brighten up the tail. I'm going to just show you how to blend the next two sections in a close-up. For the belly section of the fly and the head, we're going to be using a blend of big fish fibre, strong fuzzy fibre, which is what I've just cut, big fish fibre. May not use all of this, I'm just going to cut enough. So we're going to be making 3 tying points. So the rear tying point will use the big fish fibre at its half length effectively, because we cut it at the middle of the hank, and then we're just going to take and cut it not quite in half, just maybe 1/3 to 2/3. So there's your 3 tying points effectively, and we're going to do the same with the big fish fibre, but I always cut it slightly smaller. Big fish fibre tends to help bind the fibres together. So we've got head, second shoulders and wing or body, I guess. In addition to that, we're just going to use some of this. You don't need a lot. Now we ripstack, as Gunnar would call it, just to blend it all together. You can see straight away. Now you've got a material that isn't just one solid colour, it's got a bit of complexity to it. It's also got some volume. We'll do the same so we've got those 3 done. I'll move those over to my tying station, and then we're going to do the same with these 3 fibres. Don't need a lot. These hanks last you for a long time. Predator fly fishing.co.uk. Another good independent outlet out there that deserves our support. The tiger hair, you only need a very small amount. You can easily overdo it on the tiger hair. And then again, we just take some don't need a lot. So for the rear stack, I'm going to take half of this and cut 1/3 off. the front stack, I'm going to take some off there and put a few longer fibres. And I'm going to cut that in half. The tiger hair, we can put a few in there, and then we're going to cut it by 40-60 just to get into those stacks. A few of these fibres in. So again, we've got 3 stacks ready for blending. That's the head, shoulders, straight body, wing, body, tail area. And we're going to tie those in. So we've got 3 tie-in points, and we've got the underneath sections there. So I'm going to go back to the vise now. We'll start tying those in. Okay, so we will start with the now you can brush these out just to get the fibres all aligned. I like to do it on my knee, which is not very good for the camera angle. But you get the point. So we'll tie this in on top. You can see it's slightly shorter at the front. And that blended material you can see there gives it almost a scaly complexity. You just want to start, make sure all the materials are on top. Don't worry about leaving the shank visible at the sides. A couple of wraps, and then you can turn it over. And then we've got the same on the bottom. Now that's a little bit denser than the top. The bottom should always be slightly less dense, so I'll just take a few fibres out there. And then if you're tying with the hook, obviously for tying purposes, just try and split the hairs into 2, and then you can put it either side of the hook. But with these shanks, it's a more pleasant experience tying actually. You don't seem to catch your fingers. A loose wrap, just then a couple of tight wraps, and then we're going to split the top and the bottom. Now with this particular tying in point, we tie over the top, so in gunner's terminology, that would be to bullet tie. And this is now super durable. And just put a few wraps in front. Okay, we're tying for pike here. Old Aesop's teeth getting in there. Having 5 or 6 more wraps. Doesn't matter, we're not tying size 30 dry flies. So again, a dab of super glue. As you can see, that nylon, clear nylon tying thread really takes on the colours of the surroundings, and again that's a new thing that I've started using. Also good for tying with bucktail, it's nice and strong. You can see the flies nicely developing a shape now. That's the tail section. We just need to create the shoulder and the head now, which we're doing 2. 2 tie-ins. So again, you can just run the fibres through the comb there, get everything aligned. Oh, I forgot to say, we just need to wind a little bit forward, otherwise we're going to end up with too much going on. Sometimes I put an extra tie point on it, obviously depends how the fly is going. We might have to put an emergency extra tying point in here if it doesn't go to plan. We're trying to keep this all on top and all on side, so the profile of the fly is super thin, super thin. And the idea is that'll nicely cruise and ride through the current on the rivers. Moved away from using the woolly type of fibres, because you can see how this goes through here like this. Well, if pike teeth, they don't catch, pike teeth won't either, which is a good thing. You don't want the pike teeth to catch. What you want is it to go through and get a good hook hold. Again, make sure it's all on top of on the bottom in this case, all in the same location. Couple of wraps. Now this time we're going to wrap in front instead of on top, because we want to get that volume. And I'll show you my cheats way on how to deal with unruly synthetic fibres now. So we're just going to go in front, creating a small, I think we're going to have to put an extra tying point on this one. So you can see the fibres want to spread out. This is where super glue is your friend. Take the super glue and don't be worried about it soaking right into the body of the fly. Now you may not want to get too as you can see, it's taken on the right orientation now straight away. I think because I've been quite sparse, I'm going to get 2 more tying points in here, so I'll blend some more materials. It just shows how each fly differs, and the last fly was similar size, 5 tying points. I'm going to put 6 into this one by the look of things. That's fly tying for you. I've probably gone a bit sparser on the materials this time, which is fine. So you can do bottom then top, or top then bottom, that's entirely up to you. Same again. Don't worry about if there's gaps, little gaps developing, don't worry about that. You might think it's not going to look right, but you'll see in a second on the last tie-in point how that all comes together. Just trying to get into that one again. Super glue is your friend. don't know how long this brush will last before it's all crudded up and stuck in the pot, but just get that super glue around the front, let it soak in. Right, there we go. So I'm just going to blend a little bit of extra material for the head. Take a small amount of orange. For the throat. So that might look as though that's what you need. If you think that's what you need, take half of it. Probably 10 fibres maybe. Good enough. Cut that in half. So now you have the two side lateral lines, the throat pack, gill pack if you like, head, bottom and top, and then the eyes, which will get glued on with epoxy afterwards. So we'll move back to the vise and show you how to apply those. And now for the head. So as before, keep it nice and tight to the previous tie-in point. So we've got the top on, throat, just take a little bit out of that and trim it down slightly. Again, just keep it nice and tight to the previous tie-in point. This is where we put the lateral lines and the throat pack in. So take your orange. What I like to do is just pull the middle out slightly to taper it. Pop that in there. You don't need a lot because you're going to double that up, don't forget. That's in there nicely. And then take one of your pre-prepared lateral line, sorry about my squeaky bobbin. This pattern's been so successful, I shouldn't really be sharing it with you, to be honest. Just slightly taper those. You see how sparse this is, and you'll be surprised at how much that adds to the fly. Because it's on the lateral line, it covers all of those tying in points. So as I said earlier, don't worry too much. If you think you can see, oh, I've got those little bunches there where I can see where I've tied it in, don't worry about that. You could do this with white as well if you wanted to just keep the fly a bit more natural. You could just do that with white. And then this is the little tricky bit. So I'll leave the lateral lines to tie in last. So what we're trying to do is find all of the grey and split that out with the white and the orange. We want to orient that top and bottom. It's hard to show you on camera. You've got a few sticking out, just slowly work on it. There's no rush. Just get everything lined up how you want it. Right, so we leave those lateral lines out on the sides, like so. Pop a wrap in front over the lateral lines, or 2 wraps, or 3 or 5, depending on how you're feeling. And then you occasionally get this fight because it's synthetic materials which want to fight against what you're doing. Which again, we're going to use a bit of glue in a minute and I'll just sort it all out, so don't get too overly concerned about bits popping out here and there. Right, and just create a little cone of wrap in front of that until you're happy. And I'll just throw in I'll just hang that down and leave that on for now, because we're just going to work on this head. Now if you're using wool materials or synthetic wool type materials, you don't need to do any of this because the head now would be fully moulded. You can see it's fighting to move forward, that folded back bit is. So what I do, I'll try and do it on the side. I usually do it on top, but I'll do it on the side so you can see. You just get some of that glue in there, like I've done on the previous ties. Get that lateral line lined up and get it to soak in. See, it's already trying to take up that nice pattern. Let's just get this right underneath. So there's a bit of white just that's not sitting nicely. Yeah, you could mess around with silicone and stuff on these heads, but it's not really necessary. I'll just put a bit on those lateral lines just to get them down, and then you'll find you've got a nice area to glue the eyes on. And now that that glue is set, I will remove the tight thread. Now what you want to do is just hold it in its natural shape. Take your scissors and any stray fibres, a few. I suppose a little bit of the gill pack. I mean, you could spend all day just faffing around with it, but that will catch your fish. It is. All we need to do now is glue on the epoxy eyes. One of my least favourite parts of fly tying is gluing the eyes on. I've tried various methods over the years. I find a blob of 5-minute epoxy is probably the least problematic. So what I tend to do is use a piece of card that's got a bit of a plasticky feel to the surface, otherwise it tends to soak in. Mix for 30 seconds. Take a blob. Take off any excess if it's a little bit too much. I then use some alcohol, which I put on my fingers. Get a bit of alcohol on your fingers. And then pop the eye into position. Use the butt end of the needle. Like so. Do the same on the other side. Keeping a bit of alcohol on my finger. Take the hate gluing eyes on. And then still got alcohol on my fingers. Just pop them down and then put them to one side to dry. I'm going to add a mustard size 6. The blending of those different materials just gives it, in my opinion, that fishy look. The lateral line, as mentioned earlier, seems to be a trigger on these lures, and hence I've moved the flies over to a similar design as these lures that was so successful before I was a fly angler. Anyway, that's my Y special. Tight lines, boys and girls. Move that side.